Hey everybody, Todd Hayen here with ManTalk, and we're going to get going in a minute with a clip here of Robert Moore talking about our great and wonderful King Trump. And
Trump, so perfectly timed.
Yes, I know.
I feel like I want to say we had this planned a long time ago. It's not just because it literally in the last 24 hours, it's this whole thing about him being a king.
Yeah, and it's we got this clip 3-4 weeks ago.
And Empowered Masculinity produced this.
Yeah.
It's like two months ago or something. So
yeah.
Shout out to him. Empowered Masculinity. Way to go, buddy. You called it.
So this will be interesting today because of all that's going on, and we got a couple of sidebars too with the Trump delusional. What is it? Delusional syndrome. It's actually dysfunctional. Wait, it's this. What is
derangement syndrome?
Derangement syndrome. Yeah, you could throw a lot of words in there. That would work just as well. Right. So let me play the clip and then we'll get going. Here it is.
That is, if you consciously admire a person for their energy of one of these quadrants, you will be invoking that in yourself through your admiration. So it's a lot easier to find somebody that has a lot of raw king energy than it is to find somebody that's got a balance. For example, this Trump. He's got a lot of raw king energy. You want to know what king energy is like in its raw form? It's that empire building. I'm going to build me the Taj Mahal. And that's the capacity to build things, build an empire. That's king energy. And of course, as I like to say to people sometimes, it'd be nice if he was interested in helping the homeless. Because if he had all that king energy, and he knew what it was for, and he started trying to put some of that know-how to work in rehabilitating inner-city housing, we might have a lot of changes in our homeless problem very fast, you
see. All right. Man, spoken by the master.
Robert Moore. I mean, when I first saw this clip, I'm like, look, I'm already kind of goo goo gaga over him anyway, Robert Moore. But that he had this sort of, I guess, instinct, premonition, whatever this would have been. For those of you who are not familiar, this clip probably would have been from the 90s or the 80s. My guess is. So this is way back when Trump was still a real estate baron.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. I thought it was from his first term, but it was before he was president.
No. As I think we touched on in the last episode, Robert Moore died. I think it was in 2000.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Mm-hmm. Well, that was in the middle of Trump's term, wasn't it? 16 to 20.
Yeah, no. But I mean, my guess is that most of the talks of Robert Moore that were recorded were from his sort of peak period, which was, I think, in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, right.
So my guess would this is probably the 80s when Trump was the 80s Trump.
Okay.
That we know.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to lead off with this? William?
We were talking about this before we started rolling, and I was asking this question about Robert Moore's making this case about what would happen if he turns this energy, and I'm like, well, isn't archetypal theory based around the premise that in order for kingship to be effective, that it needs to be in its wholeness? But rewatching that clip, he makes a good point. He's like, it's hard to find balanced king energy. Here, what we see in Trump is this raw energy. And I want to try to unpack what he means by raw. I think if you listen to what everything Robert Moore was saying, it's like, what if it wasn't raw? What if it was cooked alchemically by the warm, loving heart of the lover archetype, who can bring that kind of warmth? And rather than about building his empire to sort of aggrandize himself, he was being able to open his heart to the people who are suffering and build in for them. And that would be bringing more balance into it. And I think he's sort of fantasizing about what would happen if all of that great raw energy were directed in that way, by which he means more balanced by lover energy.
Do you feel that a leader of any great nation, which obviously the United States would be considered a great nation, like great meaning large and powerful and whatever, do you think any leader of any great nation can have a balanced king archetype running? It doesn't seem like it really. I mean, it may be beneficial, okay, obviously, but The idea to me, when I hear him talking about the balanced king, it's more for the individual than it is for an actual leader that has the finger on the button and has to deal with so much aggression in the world, as far as, like, say right now, the Middle East, Iran, whatever the aggression, the potential aggression could be, and certainly Canada. We have to always remember them as possible aggressors. I'm making a joke. You're supposed to smile. Yeah, right. I'm in Canada, by the way. I am a Canadian, so I'm making a joke about at my own expense as well. I'm American as well. I'm both. Anyway, I could make a joke about that too, but I'm not going to. But anyhow, what I'm getting at is that it seems that through being a great president, let's say, because that's where Trump is right now, obviously doing what he needs to do as the king, as the president of the United States, that if his first attentions, his first focus is accomplished, whatever that might be. I mean, obviously what's going on in Ukraine, the Middle East, with Israel, and what's going on in Canada, wherever in the world is his first focus, that if that all goes successfully, his assumption then is, say, as Robert Moore's talking about, the homeless problem will become not necessarily entirely solved, but at least will get the attention as almost like a trickle down kind of thing, that it won't necessarily have to be, oh, I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to put Ukraine aside, and I'm going to focus on the infrastructure, the internal things, with the love of the lover to come out and have compassion and care. I'm going to do that first. I don't know if a leader of a country like the United States would benefit from that balance. I mean, am I way off with that? I mean, what do you think?
You say it again. So I don't know if a country would benefit from the balance of.
I don't know if let's take the United States in particular, because that's where Trump is. I don't know if the United States at this point in time, right now, would benefit positively from a more balanced king.
Right. Yeah, good question. And I think also, like, embedded in that question is you're asking, like, to what extent do leaders need to constellate kingship in its wholeness, right, in order to be effective?
Right.
And that I can definitely jump off on for sure. So, right. I mean, one of the things that we notice is that it's very, very, very hard to find any leader anywhere who really is constellating kingship in its fullness to a high degree,
or ever have,
or ever has. And I think that there's also a trouble in this belief that we need them to be kind of perfect. Exactly. And this is one of the things that Trump is smashing. It's like you need, in the past, you've needed to idolize your leaders, and they have to put on this facade of diplomacy and whatever. And he's flipping that upside down, true chaos dealer that he is, and saying, like, when I no longer am beholden to the need to be liked or civil or whatever, look at what I can do. So yeah, I mean, would it be better? I think the better question is, like, I think what Robert Moore is trying to fantasize about in this clip is, what would happen if Trump said, okay, I'm going to run on a platform of how do we address the most underserviced people in our civilization, and start to really, build worlds for them in the way that he built his own world of real estate. I think Trump, the mission that he's undergoing right now is one in which he actually believes, through trickle down kind of idea, what you're saying is that, yeah, we're like, one of the core things is, like, especially with the USAID thing, is that what he's trying to bring your awareness into is when it's not necessarily, people ideologically will kind of get into this. It's not necessarily that you may approve or disapprove of the idea that there's a drag show going on in Peru that we're funding, right? Right. Because whatever. I mean, right. His point is this: why are we funding drag shows in Peru, for which many of the American citizens would disapprove because they're Christian and conservative and whatever. But why are we not using that money to take care of our own?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's his position. His position is like, what? Can you imagine being a homeless person in a sanctuary city who just found out that these illegal immigrants that just crossed the border were given a hotel room and money? And that homeless person is going like, what the fuck? You just gave them a home and you give them a stipend. I don't know if they get stipends, but I'm imagining that they get some kind of support. And that homeless person being like, what the fuck? And I think the question that he's posing to American society is, isn't that what we want to do? And that's why I think Robert Morris got a point. And I think actually, weirdly enough, Trump is, in his own fucking crazy, wild, chaotic way, doing this. The difference, though, is it's not from a place of love, that lover energy that needs to balance the king in order to bring him into empathy to find that balance, right? He's still, like, Trump is still fully possessed, not fully, but he's very, to a large extent, possessed by the archetype of the tyrant, right? But we're talking now about this question of, is it about incidentals at this point? So it's like I said before, Trump is not an ideologue. The only ideological, kind of, the only ideology that he prescribes to is his own greatness. And the thing with narcissists is that it's like they expand it. So it's like, America must be a great country because I'm American. And if America is not, I blame other people and I do what I possibly can to raise it up to the importance and the grandiosity that I see within me, because it's an extension of me.
Well, yeah, it is him. He's included that as his brand. As I was saying earlier, his brand is the US. It's like if you have a CEO of a company who is a narcissist and has to have that company succeed and be very successful under his rule, then that feeds his narcissism. And in some ways, if you were an employee of that company and you were making nice bonuses and doing really well because the company was successful, you wouldn't give a damn if the leader of that company, the CEO, was a narcissist or not. And, of course, the people in the States or the ones that are opposed to Trump, and there's quite a few of them, less than half, I guess, do not see it that way. They think that he's out to kill them and to destroy them. If Trump destroys the United States, he's destroying himself. And he's not going to consciously do that. It may end up that way. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how powerful and how strong he can be to keep it all together. But his intention is to make the U.S. thrive because it makes him thrive. I mean, it's just what you said. I'm just putting.
Sure, but there are those also on the left who are under the belief that, like, the strategy behind this kind of shock and awe campaign is to demoralize the working classes and to cut them off from all the support networks in order to weaken them so that he can then consolidate power and dominate them, right, for his own aggrandizement and not for the benefit of the country, right? That's the alternative narrative. I understand completely why people fear that, because it's certainly from the way he goes about things. He doesn't do anything. He goes out of his way to amplify that fear. He really is a leader who uses emotion and fear to drive his agenda. But yeah, I mean, the question here is like, and I was going to point out to you about narcissism. For those of you who are unfamiliar, although I don't know that anyone could possibly be at this point in history, a classic narcissistic thing is it looks like appreciative consciousness, right? It's a weird kind of like distorted view where a narcissist goes like, he has a car, right? And he goes, look at this car. It's the best fucking car in the world. You can't believe it. This paint job was done by this incredible guy who did a beautiful paint job. And that this car has more whatever for, and they'll go on about it. And it on the surface, it's seductive because it's like, ooh, appreciative consciousness. This guy really loves the car. But really what you recognize is that what's happening in that moment is that it's a metonym. The car is a part of the whole. He's really talking about himself. The reason that this car is so beautiful and great is really because it's my car. Right?
Yeah.
but weirdly, in that moment, what he does is he actually appreciates and rises up and kind of inflates the people who made the car. Now, on the other end of that, I think for a lot of people it lands flat because it doesn't feel like him truly being appreciative. It feels kind of hollow.
But the
kind of relationship of America to Trump is that that's the way kind of, because he's very high in narcissism. That's exactly how he's going to see it.
But comparing that to a different, like we're talking about the whole idea of the balanced king with the lover intact and part of the integration.
Mm-hmm.
You can compare that to someone like, say, Joe Biden, who maybe, or even a more popular president, Barack Obama. You can see how the lover then does present itself in decisions and methods of governing, but most of that, to me at least, has been deceptive. And one of the lines you hear all the time about Trump, well, Trump says what he thinks, and at least it's easier to deal with him because what he says and what he does is honest. It's a true reflection of his intentions. And I'm wondering if these people that think that they've integrated, say, is a more integrated king, a more balanced king, but in fact the balance is artificial, that what they're bringing in is deceptive, is not really real, is a lot worse to deal with. I certainly would think it would be. I would rather deal with the tyrant king that wasn't completely out of his mind, like Hitler, say, was. Okay. I'd rather deal with that tyrant king that was, like you said, narcissistic, thought of the America or the United States as being his nice fancy car. That's a reflection of himself. It belongs to me, therefore I'm going to take care of it and let everybody know how great it is. I'd rather have somebody like that calling the shots than somebody who's deceiving me all of the time, if that's the truth. I'm not saying it is.
I would agree. No, I would agree. It was really obvious to me years ago that, like, we are, when it comes to kingship, I mean, we are right now, and by we, I mean United States, but it's like swinging between these two bipolar shadow opposites. It's like when I'm teaching my clients about archetypal kingship, I'm like, and in the bipolar shadow, you have the tyrant and the coward. And it's like 3, 2, 1. Get the joke? Trump, Biden. It's perfect. And what's interesting too, and I think this is part of the thing that's important to bring into our conscious awareness, is that to the extent to which Donald Trump is under the possession of the shadow tyrant, Biden was under the possession of the weakling, right? But they're both dangerous because of how much shadow is not integrated in them and how much it drives them, right? In terms of narcissism, I mean, to be honest, there's the difference between Donald Trump's narcissism and Joe Biden's narcissism or Obama's narcissism is just what it looks like on the surface. But internally, it's the same thing. Look.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot be the leader of the free world and not be high in narcissism.
No, of course not.
I'll give you one exception. You could make the argument that a character like maybe Jimmy Carter fits into that.
Yeah, but he was really effective.
But here's the thing. But generally speaking, you got to be high in narcissism to even want that job. And I think you're right. I mean, I think it's just a difference of, like, someone's overt, malignant, in your face, obvious narcissism is going to cause a lot more kind of reaction than when it's covert and hidden and kind of, deceptive in that way. But I think you're right in the extent that, that direct, aggressive form of narcissism is a little bit easier to deal with because it's on the surface.
Well, for us,
we're going to go into Iraq because we want regime change, but no, really we want oil. It's like if Trump was a neocon, he'd be like, we want the fucking oil. We're going in to take the oil.
Yeah, right.
We're there for.
Well,
now,
look what he's
one
doing.
Of them, don't fucking invade sovereign countries and destabilize an entire region because you want to aggrandize, the American fucking, position, right? But one is covert, one is overt. And it's funny how we seem to think, oh, no, it's only the overt version of this that's like really the true threat, but the covert, okay, it's actually, we can accept that. What? That's equal.
Well, there's a lot more potential for destructive result when it's covert. It's like if it's on the face, you can dispute it, you can argue it, you can certainly globally you can. I mean, we can't obviously, but it becomes something that is, again, it's like all the cards are on the table. There's nothing turned over or hidden under the table or whatever it might be. It's clear. Now we're not factoring in, and we're not factoring in the possibility that the world is essentially pushing for a globalization of power, of like a centrist kind of system of non-elected, non-sovereign state power over the globe, over the world. This is primarily the reason why Trump was pulled out of the WHO, and probably there'll be a lot of other things in the future that look like that, assuming that he's not one of them. Playing the game. That's a big topic I won't go into. But
I'm actually more curious, because I want to go back to a little bit more of the king archetype, because I think maybe a lot of our viewers are not as familiar with what that means. One of the things I was just thinking about, as a question I was going to ask you too, is, so the way that Robert Moore explains the archetype of the king in his fullness is that a leader is not really constellating the archetype of the king in its fullness if he's not directly in alignment with what he calls the transpersonal other, something bigger than him. Okay, so what that means is not driven by ideology. That's the shadow version. I'm driven by something bigger than me, an ideology. This we're talking about, like why Hitler was so dangerous, was because it's tyranny with an ideological agenda, and an ideological agenda that's based on an ideology of destruction and death and hatred and whatever, right? But that's the thing. That's what drives the libidinal energy up into the king. So what he says is, if you're off the mark, you're being driven into one of the shadows. But if it's on point, if you're actually being driven by something bigger than you, that's actually, I'm going to say, like pure in its divine form, right? Truly in service of the good, then you are actually constellating kingship, right?
Okay.
Am I making sense, or am I like confusing?
Yeah, no, you're making sense to me. I guess it just keeps popping in on me, this idea of balance, of king balance. And did we talk about this in the session about Robert Moore doing this clip, like when he did it? Was that in the session, or was that before the session? My assumption when watching this clip is that it was done when Trump was president in his first term. And we talked about it and kind of concluded that it probably wasn't, that it was more likely that it was during Trump's height in the real estate world. And it's interesting if that's the case, that he comments on the balanced king being one that may put some attention toward the homeless. And it's like, you go, well, if you're a real estate magnate, if you're a big shot in real estate, why would you give a crap about the homeless people? It has nothing to do with your brand. It has nothing to do with what you're doing. As a president, it certainly does. But just thinking of the focus of the balanced king, and the balanced king as president, in certain contexts, in certain environments, that certainly would be beneficial to have a more balanced king. I think the way the world is right now, with the conflicts going on in the world and the conflicts going on in the United States in particular, again, I'm not sure if that would be something that would be workable. A more balanced king, a king with more lover, with more magician. It just doesn't, it seems like, well, maybe if everything gets back into shape, or back into shape as if it ever was, but gets in a more, more peaceful world, less conflict in the major areas as there's conflict, maybe then, let's balance this king out a little bit, and the next president, or in 6 terms from now, if it takes that long, is going to be better off if he's more like Jimmy Carter, let's say. I mean, Jimmy Carter was a brilliant man. He may have been a brilliant leader in a different time. It's just, we're not in that time right now. It needs somebody to come in there and rip some stuff apart. It seems that way.
Yeah, that there is this kind of Shiva energy behind this destroying in order to create.
Right.
No, I hear you, but I wanted to go back to what you were saying, because I think you're making a good point. We're, if anything, beyond political ideology, we are in a crisis of leadership, right? Globally. One of the troubles that we are facing in every country is that we do not have leaders available to us who are offering themselves up for service, who are able to be elected, who are capable of truly archetypal kingship or queenship, right? And that's really the problem. And I think that that's a bigger problem. And I think where that comes from is that when you get into this kind of disintegration, when you get into a phase like what the Hindus call the Kali Yuga, which is a circling the drain, a kind of disintegrating of things, right? Which is like the moving on the spectrum from this time in which kings and queens in their wholeness were risen up by the people, right? You have a situation in which people who do have that kind of constellation do not want to be involved in American politics because it's a dirty game, and the dirty game attracts dirty people, right? If the game is rigged, you're gonna attract cheaters. So that's part of the problem, and I think this is it actually kind of trickles down into one of the more contemporary issues that a lot of people are facing is, do I stay in a country that is falling apart, or do I get the fuck out of here? On the one hand, I completely understand. I have that urge myself. Why do I want to be living in the crumbling empire when I could, work online and go and live in a place where there still is some stability? Fundamentally, though, I think the problem with that is that it's self-serving, right? And then it's you only thinking of yourself. If all of the people with any kind of conscience, all of the people with any kind of capacity for maturity and for a whole integrated way of being in the world run from this mad fire that we're fucking in, to their own safety because they can't take it anymore, there will be nobody left. And we will be subsumed by darkness.
Absolutely.
So on the one hand, I completely understand the urge to get the fuck out of a crumbling thing and protect yourself and take care of yourself and go escape to your cabin in the woods where you're going to, use a shotgun to protect your water supply and take care of yourself and your children, whatever. I get it. But if that's what continues to happen, there will be no good people left to fight the good fight against the darkness. And we will truly, I think, crumble. I think what's required now is for people to say, even though what I'm facing feels overwhelming, I still choose to stay here and try and fight the good fight. And it's a bottom-up thing too. And I think a big part of it is not getting wrapped up into ideology, right? If we can get trans-ideological about this and pull back into some fundamental things, right? That's the hope here. But if we keep getting in like, okay, I'm going to fight the good fight, but I'm going to fight it on the side of this particular ideology, conservative, liberal, progressive, whatever. That's the ideological. That's the off the markness that Robert Moore was talking about. Because at the peak of that pyramid, if it's not truly God, the divine, the transpersonal other, if it's an ideology, it's going to pull you into one of these two imbalanced positions. Am I making sense, or am I?
So, taking what you just said, I mean, are you speaking? I think you are. Are you speaking of the individual, or are you speaking of the global leaders? That we can't as a culture, as a community, say a North American or Western or United States community, withdraw from the Kali energy or the Shiva energy that comes in to rip this apart in order to rebuild it properly. That we're in this polarized state of just focusing on Trump rather than focusing on what results from his chaotic insanity. you know,
Yeah,
and be
critique on
able
the
to
left.
build. Does that make sense? I don't know. I sound like
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
think so.
babbling.
Let me respond and tell me if I'm getting you right. The critique from the left is that the shock and awe campaign is meant to distract you. It's like he's doing it intentionally in order to scramble everyone's head so that no one's paying attention, and that everyone is constantly focused on putting out these fires that he's starting. Right? Okay. I mean, my point is this: rather than us sitting around waiting for great leaders to show up and save us, that we become great leaders ourselves. And in order to become great leaders ourselves and to really constellate kingship, we need to start looking beyond ideology, right? And something that's deeper, that transcends that. Because at this point in history, like everyone keeps waiting for, it's like, oh, the Democrats, the problem with you is that you got to run a better candidate. Who? What fucking candidate do you think that you're going to run that somehow is going to change this thing around? You know, it's like you're going to anybody who would be able to constellate kingship in its fullness doesn't want anything to do with American politics, and quite rightly so.
Yeah, but then I mean I agree with you. Okay, I agree with you. As you see what I feel like we're doing, which is fine, but I feel like we're moving from one level to another level, and it takes me a minute to catch up with the level you're in, and then maybe I go back down to this level. You know, we're looking at the individual level. We're looking at being able to create a world of humans that can get along with one another and create a creative, productive life. Okay. That's this level right here. Then we started talking about the level of the king as a leader of the world, a leader of a country, a leader of whatever.
Right.
All right. That's that level here. Or actually, it's more like this.
Mm.
All right. Now, if this is the level that we're talking about, we don't need any kings running countries. I mean, it's more of an anarchist kind of idea of volunteerism, whatever term you want to put to that. It's more of being able to function as small communities that work together and trade, whatever it might be, that it's not some nationalistic idea of a country that has bombs and defense and armies and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's a huge topic, obviously. I'm 100% with you on that. That's where you have within that community leaders and kings that are fully integrated, that are leaders of their families, maybe leaders of the community of a small group of people that exist within the realm of something that they have to make decisions as a group. Okay, that's where you have the true balanced king, the king that is not the tyrant, the king that when necessary constellates the warrior, when necessary constellates the lover and constellates the magician, whatever they are. Okay. At that level, I think you can have that.
Yeah.
At this level, we're talking, I mean, it's almost like just do what you can do to pull this crap together, because it's so fucked up.
Yeah.
It's like the world is so screwed up right now. And has been for a while, but I think it's reaching a zenith, reaching a peak. How do you deal with that? Do you really want a balanced king to do that? I don't think so. But it's bad no matter what. You know, having a tyrant, having somebody like, say, like Trump, that can go in there and make massive mistakes, that can have massive consequences.
Yeah, terrifying.
Yeah, it's finger crossing time. But what's better?
Yeah, I don't know.
What's better than that? The same as we've had for the last 20 years or whatever. It's I don't know.
Well,
and you know, that's not what we're talking about. I know.
But I'm with you. I'm with you. I mean, essentially what you're saying is that, like, I think that there's a case to be made for things continuing as they were is a fantasy. That was never going to save us from the kind of chaos that we're in now. And I get you. And yeah, no, you're right. This is about going down a level, which is about my position being not waiting around for leadership to show up. That's
yeah, you're 100%.
Instead of
100%
on yourself. And this is an issue that we deal with in counseling, right? And this is have you heard this concept through who's the guy that wrote Homecoming, the original guy with Parts Work, the inner child stuff. Anyway, he has this concept of relentless hope, which is that the inner child within you is relentlessly hoping that one day your parents are going to show up as the people that you needed them to be when you needed them when you were a kid. And it's like, as soon as you can drop that relentless hope and start allowing them to be as they are, flawed, right? And start focusing on you being the mother and father that you need for yourself, that's when you're freed from this contract of like trying to make them something that they aren't, or trying to wait around for them to become something that they're not, right? It's not going to happen.
Or to transfer that to somebody else and waiting them to be the parent
100%.
you never had.
So
Yeah.
John Bradshaw, shout out John Bradshaw, genius.
Okay.
You're right, exactly. And so that my point is kind of like coming from him, which is that we need to sort of cut this tie to relentless hope for leadership to fucking save us, and recognize that we save us, right? We become the leaders in our wholeness. And we start by being sovereign over our own personal domain, sovereign over the communities in which we have leadership qualities.
100%.
Now I get it that from the fucking like nightmare of a perspective that most people are living right now, it's kind of like, well, it's too fucking late for building up from the ground up, because right now the ship is sinking, and everyone's, in IFS terms, firefighter parts are homicidal, suicidal, tune out, whatever. And trying to bring in manager parts, if you're familiar with IFS, is we're beyond that point, because the fire is already in our
consumed.
Yeah. But I mean, my point though, just to end it, is that like, no, I actually do think that regardless of where anyone perceives that we are in terms of civilizational decline, it's never a bad idea for you to take all the energy that you've been bleeding into this thing that you really can't do a whole lot about.
Right.
Even if you are under a belief that like, revolutionary action is effective and we are, we should do it. Really, the most important thing is for you, what to do, work on you. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. If you think that the most important issue is homelessness, as Robert Moore was sort of pointing out in this thing, go feed the homeless. Go sit and listen to them. Go be present with heart.
Oh, you're starting to sound like Jordan.
Jordan Peterson?
Yeah.
I don't know that like homelessness is his sort of hill to die on.
No. One of his focuses has always been you make your life what,
you're right.
your
true.
Ideal is. It's like he's always
clean up your own bedroom.
He's always babbled on about people that go into causes and when they're 23 years old, go on marches and whatever. It's like, clean up your own mess, and then you might get in a position where you can do that. I think that's absolutely 100%. I'm there on that. I think going back to this Trump and the world issue, and maybe I'm off on this, but it's almost like it's like the lesser of the two evils, the standard concept of like, well, what's the best thing to happen right now in a global sense? And, maybe, and this is a personal thing, but maybe I lean more toward this belief that we do need that destructive, that Sekhmet or Kali or whatever energy to tear this all down first and then worry about building it back up. And that's a reason why the Trump thing doesn't bother me as much as it seems to so many people. I don't love Trump. I don't think he's the greatest thing. I don't think he's the Messiah or anything. Certainly not directly, maybe indirectly he is, but not directly. I mean, just like Kali would not be considered a Messiah.
That's a really good question though. And I think we were kind of hinting at that before, is like, what if spoiler alert, like, incidentally, it's like the thing that saves us is like malignant narcissism at right. Somehow like that serves us right. Just one point though, like it's funny, like what we need right now. Decline is inevitable. Like it's like we're not doing about that. Like it's like there's nothing or any, like there's no force out there that can turn around this trajectory that we're moving toward. Things change. Things have been the way that they are, and they're crumbling, and they're crumbling faster. That is not anything anyone can do anything about. The question is, Can we meet this falling apart, this disintegration of the world that we know, with a bit of grace and a bit of skill, and minimize the collateral damage, you know? And the question, it's not about maybe the lesser of two evils, because I think, you know, when you get into that, it's kind of like people will just argue about like what would you rather, this or that, and they both suck. It's like, no, it's like, what do we need to do right now, given the state of affairs as it is, to minimize the kind of the suffering that's going to happen? And my position would be fighting for an ideological position, whatever that ideological position may be, is not an effective use of your time, and probably making things worse.
Absolutely. But, you know, I was thinking while you were talking about that, I was going, okay, what's the lesser of the two evils? In my mind, the lesser of the two evils. Now, this isn't advocating full destruction in order to build back. This isn't like a Sekhmet Kali concept, because if that were the case, fine, have a war in Europe, send the nukes over there, Iran, you know, blow the fuck out of Israel, whatever. That would be the take, and I'm not on that position. I see the lesser of the two evils is that one evil is killing people, and lots of them. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people being killed every day. Okay. That, or what are the consequences of not killing people? What are the consequences of Putin getting his way and winning his war and getting what he wanted? Oh, that really sucks. He's the aggressor. He came into Ukraine and we're going to give him what he wanted. That's the lesser of the two evils. And that's what I mean when I'm saying that. Yeah, sure, that's not good. That's I mean, depending on how you look at it, that's not good. That Putin's aggression actually paid off. Okay, now I don't really believe that, because I know quite a bit about Ukraine, and I know quite a bit about NATO and about what Russia wants from Ukraine or whatever. So I'm not one to say that's an evil. All right, necessarily. But I think a lot of people see it that way. A lot of people say, continue this war, keep killing those Russians, get them the fuck out of there, because they're the aggressors. They should be wiped out, or else they're going to take over Europe and they're going to do this and this and this. Okay, so that's their evil.
We'll see them take something and then they'll go for Taiwan, and then we get
exactly. Now, my simplistic view is stop killing. Period. That's a simplistic view. It's like, figure it out after that. Do whatever you need to do to get what you need to get, but stop killing people. And that's what Trump is doing. So now maybe it won't stay that way. I'm not saying he's the greatest thing.
Oh yeah, isn't that what he said that quite effectively about?
Yeah, he did say that. He said that almost word for word.
Feet to the fire, and he's like, I want people to stop dying. Yeah,
right.
Well, yeah, that, and you know, I was thinking recently too about this idea that, you know, okay, let's just get back to this basic idea, like fundamentals, like, you know, murder is wrong, killing is wrong.
Right.
Yeah, the trouble with that though is that I think what the trouble is that with complexity, we run into simplicity rather than meet it with nuance. And that's one of the big problems, is that everything is overly simplified. The fact that we're talking about, like, you know, trans issues, and people can't distinguish between transgender, transsexual, you know, it's like, those are huge different categories, right?
Yeah. Or homosexual even, that's conflated with transsexual.
But we need nuance in that. We need people to come through and say, okay, these things are distinctly different. And there's a difference between, you know, someone who's identified as a male who's transitioned medically, entering a bathroom for men, right? It like this, or for women rather, right? If there's a threat, there's no threat there, right? Anyway,
no, there's not.
I'm arguing for the case of nuance, right? And so I think when it comes to this stop the killing thing, I mean, fuck, man, yeah, dude, I don't like killing. I want the killing to stop. On the other hand, here's the problem. If you say stop the killing blanketly, what if there's a person who is going to kill other people, and then you say, no, well, don't kill him because we need to stop the killing? you know. And so I think that
that's not the case in Russia and Ukraine, though. No, I know what you're saying, and you know what? This is the reason why.
Case for nuance that when
I agree.
We
I agree. Somebody comes into my house and threatens my wife or me,
sure.
I kill them. I don't have any problem with that. That's not what I'm talking about. And you know that. I mean, I'm not criticizing.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we wanted to talk about that particular thing about the nuance around about death and collateral damage, the more apt topic would be the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yeah, I know. I know that's what you're getting to.
Yeah,
I know you.
Like, is it effective? Does it collectively reduce suffering for us to take a perspective that all killing is wrong and to stick to it? And my argument would be, I don't think it does. I think that level of simplicity doesn't minimize the amount of suffering in the human condition. Right? I wish it did. I wish it was that simple, but it's not. Unfortunately, we have to get into this.
Yeah, but you can also say
ethics.
You can say the same thing and go the other way with it as well. You know, you can go into the politics of the whole Palestinian Israeli issue, the nuance of the politics, and the necessity of protecting or the presentation that the reason there is a war going on there is to do what you're saying, the nuance of protecting themselves from people who are bent on killing them all and whatever. I mean, there's a lot of politics engaged and all. I mean, you can even go back to World War II with Hitler. It's like, yeah, Hitler had to be stopped. Yeah, because he was a bad guy. He was going to do bad things, take over the world, whatever. But there was a lot of nuance in that. And, you know, if you get down to it, that war could have been avoided. All of it could have been avoided, all of the deaths and everything, without firing a single shot. And it's all because of the nuance. And, you know, I'm not going to be naive and say the same thing could be in Israel and Palestine. It all could have been avoided, you know, if certain political, actions were taken at a particular time in history, going all the way back, you know, quite a ways back. Yeah, you can say that about almost anything. But I don't know. I think that nuance goes both sides to it when it comes to killing people, like nations killing people in other nations and that kind of deal. I think there's nuance in both sides of it. And you get to a point where you just say, okay, what's on the line here? Killing people or trying to figure it out some other way. I know that's very naive. I mean, I'm not saying that's a given. You know, there's never any other way around it. You can always figure it out, because I don't think that's true. I don't think you can. I think you do get to a point where there really isn't anything you can do except blow the shit out of somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pacifist delusion is that somehow there's always a diplomatic solution if we can only sort of be disciplined enough and ethical enough to push for it. We'll find it. I think
there is, but I think it's dependent on where in the timeline you're in.
Yeah.
I think there reaches a point where there isn't.
Yeah.
But somewhere in there was. Yeah. So I shouldn't go this way. Somewhere over here, there was a diplomatic solution for it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't taken advantage of at the time. And, you know, you get to a point where you just want to keep the cycle going. You want to just keep going and going and going and never figuring out things that are going to be in 20 years from now going to kill a bunch of people, or do it now and avoid that.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Robert Moore has this concept in Archetypal Kingship about, you know, one of the sort of myths is that, like, you know, kings want to be kings because it's such a great thing to do, to be in charge. And he says that's not really true. And in fact, if you look back at the history of sacral kingship, the walls of the kingdom, of the castle, were not necessarily to protect the king, but to keep him in. Yeah. Because if you think, and you know, the great thought experiment of, like, can you imagine what it would be like to go to bed 10 o'clock at night and put your head in the pillow as the president of the United States, and to think of, like, all of the threats that are out there, all of the agendas that you have to, everything that's out there. I mean, who in the fucking right mind would want that level of responsibility?
Well, they're not in their right mind. That's just it. I think that's something that we don't take into account It's like, to be a leader, even to want to be one, let alone be one, you can't be in your right mind. What is right mind? You know, okay, what is that? You're not clinically insane necessarily, but you're a narcissist, you're imbalanced, you're not fully integrated, whatever that might be. It's like you're not in the normal mind to be a leader.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking too, you know, the whole thing about there was the right likes to say, oh, you know, didn't you know that the only president in the history of the presidency that didn't take the salary was Trump, right? Which is, I think it's true. Although when they asked him, he sort of didn't know. He was like, yeah, I think I didn't take a salary, which is funny. He's like, what do you mean you think you did? Is that not something that you would actually know? But I had this funny thought right now where it's like, no, because he wasn't, because, you know, ultimately, to your point, presidents aren't paid in the salary. They're paid in narcissistic supply.
Oh, of course.
That's what he gets.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I don't want the salary. I want this leadership role to give me an endless amount of narcissistic supply. And for that, you can keep your salary, because all I want is this.
Yeah, it's something I think maybe I should clarify. I would say we, but I'm not going to speak for you. I don't know if you think this is important, but I think it's important to clarify this idea of narcissist as a pathology. I think anytime we say the word narcissist, a lot of people listening are going to go, yeah, that's like a bad thing. I mean, that's like talking about somebody having,
very good,
schizophrenia or something, whatever. Narcissism is a necessary element of being a human being. You can't be completely devoid of narcissism. You have to look out for yourself. And we all do that to a certain degree if we're healthy. If we're not healthy, we don't. It's you know, you used a term a couple of weeks back, grandiostic narcissism, you know, grandiose narcissism. And also the personality disorder. It's not the disorder. You have to have personality disorder after the word narcissist for it to be a problem. Narcissism is not a problem on its own without it being exacerbated into a pathology.
Yeah, no,
it's a trait. It's a way of dealing with things.
Right. And NPD though being technically when it's taken over to the point where there's it's really the only thing that's driving.
That's right.
So yeah, narcissism, right? And like if you think of it in terms of inflation, so the capacity that the ego has for inflation is a necessary defense against deflation, right? So if you're constantly stuck in deflation because you don't have access to your true greatness, the only thing that you can rely on to pull you out of deflation is inflation. But it's a deal with the devil, because once you start to use inflation to pull you out of deflation, you have to have the conscientiousness and awareness to know when to stop. And one of the things I'm constantly coaching people on is like, if you want to pull yourself out of deflation, you have to allow for the possibility that your inflation is going to go too far and that you're going to have to check it. One of the reasons people get stuck in a deflated state from an ego perspective is because they're terrified to inflate themselves, because they've done it before and felt the sting of that narcissistic bubble bursting. And my coaching is like, you got to face that dragon. You got to lean into that fear and inflate yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to be deflated forever. Right?
Yeah. Very well put.
Yeah.
Very well put. Now,
it's dangerous stuff to play with, man. It really is, because one of the things that Robert Moore has like given us as a gift to the collective is his perspective on narcissism. As intense as it is, I think is the accurate one. And if you read Facing the Dragon, it pulls absolutely no punches. That this thing is the most pernicious and destructive and insidious force in the human condition. And if you are not paying a shit ton of focus onto what it is and how it works in you, it's gonna get you. And in fact, it's gonna get us all. And I think he's right.
Yeah, well, that's kind of pushing this idea that narcissism is a pathology.
But it's not. It's the poison's in the dose.
Yeah, right. As it always is, as it is with anything in human psychology. I mean, there are definitely physiological pathologies that affect your psychology, you know, brain damage, whatever. But I mean, that's really what psychology is about: is containment and balance and integration and consciousness. I mean, it's a big part of what I do. But going back again to the danger in narcissism, it's like we've kind of, in our talk here, we've kind of come to a conclusion that to be an effective leader, you have to have a larger dose of narcissistic systems or whatever than say the average person. But the problem is that if you're not conscious of that, if you're not aware of what you're dealing with and be able to contain it, it has a tendency, or it certainly has the potential to flare out into what Robert Moore, what you just said about his comment about that. And this is, I think, the thing that people find so dangerous about Donald Trump is that they see his narcissism in action. Whereas if they look at Biden or look at any other president or whoever, they can't see it. It's hidden, it's covered up, it's consciously covered up. Some of it's unconscious, obviously, but they don't see it, so it doesn't scare them. They don't, if you do any research, like on Biden, just so we're picking on Biden, but if you do any research about Biden's involvement with his son, with Hunter, and the whole Chinese Ukrainian thing and whatever, I mean, this guy, as all of them probably are, okay, has some really shady shit in his background. He's yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's got some really
not even
dark shit.
I don't think.
Huh?
It's not even controversial, I don't think, at this point.
Well, I won't bring this up, but there was a
again.
dialogue I heard where, surprisingly, people were like really, really defending him with just about everything. But anyhow, you have this. I mean, take somebody like Obama, who can do no bad. It's like their narcissism, which they, in my view, and maybe yours, they have to have a nice dose of to even consider being the leader of the free world and have to lay awake at night thinking about it. They're so sure of themselves and so confident, whatever, that nothing can hurt them, or whatever it is that keeps them from going nuts.
Totally, yeah.
Okay, they have that. It's already there. They are just as potential as, say, Trump is, to exercise it in the wrong way. They're just as likely to press the button or to do this as Trump is. Now, I'm not saying just as likely as Hitler is, okay, because he was over the top. And there's some people in the world, obviously, throughout history, that have been definitely over the top and are more likely to cause great damage and great destruction because of ideology, whatever it is.
Well, I think maybe that's a clear distinction. And I don't know how you would prove it, but I would say that maybe the distinction between like a figure like Hitler and a figure like Trump, and why that analogy I think is not necessarily helpful, is that Hitler was at a psychotic level of disorganization. Yes. Whereas Trump is like, I don't know that he's fully psychotic. No. Hitler, I think the hypothesis that we kind of are ending on here, which is a really interesting one, is that given where we are in history, that the only thing that entices people into leadership positions in the modern world is their own narcissism. And that's the only thing that will push through the insane level of responsibility and stress and hardship that's involved in it. And it's certainly more important to them than any other thing. And then maybe we would add also to that like one of the other things that can drive you into that position is being so fully and completely possessed by an ideology that there's nothing left of you. And again, I think that's another way of saying about Hitler is that Hitler was in an ideological possession state that was reaching the level of psychosis. In which I think you can sum up the difference between Hitler and just about anybody else with that statement. With that, right? If you took the ideology out of Hitler, he would just be a narcissistic dope. I mean, look at what he was doing before he became the leader Hitler, before they put him on the pedestal. He doesn't, it's pathological, yes, all of that, but I think what you just said, it's the ideology that created the insanity, the psychosis. And anyway, that's right. Okay, maybe we'll sum it up as like psychotic levels of narcissism when it intersects with ideological possession creates the capacity for atrocities like the Holocaust.
I like that. That's very well put.
And I think the big takeaway is, if what you're seeing in the world is terrifying you, probably the best thing that you could do about that is take a good long look at your own narcissism and try and relativize it with a little bit of humility, and stop abdicating your own throne on this mission to try and find some savior for the world, and start sitting in the seat of sovereignty in your own fucking life. And yeah, I guess I do sound like Jordan Peterson. I feel like I'm in a Jordan Peterson possession state. I'll do his karmic voice.
That's right. But going back again, we touched on the whole Trump delusional syndrome. You said something earlier too before we started recording
about Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah. I'm making a joke, but there's again, this is such a Jungian idea of projection. That if you lose your cookies over somebody like Trump and his narcissism, then you really need to look at what it is that you're accusing him of. What you just said, you really have to look at your own narcissistic dealings, how you're dealing with your own sense of self and your own sense of grandeur or whatever that might be. Because if you're that obsessed with what you're seeing in somebody else, most likely it's your stuff that you're constellating and that you're bringing up and you're projecting out onto that person. So I think that's
drive you crazy. It's yours.
Yeah, right. And there is a line there. There is a line. You can be annoyed. You can be irritated. You can even have the opinion that Trump is a bad news and he's a bad guy and all. You can even have the opinion you think he's going to destroy the world, whatever. But if you have that intense hatred and inability to even look and say, well, what did he do that doesn't fit that?
Trump derangement syndrome is, it's like the derangement we're talking about is truly a levels of psychosis, which is to what extent are you actually broken from consensus reality, which is that it's so difficult for you to see things clearly, that you're compulsively distorting, amplifying everything around you, to the point that you're no longer effective and will essentially lose your mind. And one of the problems that we see now is that people that are in that kind of state are looking at what's happening, what Donald Trump is doing, and it's literally driving them insane.
Yes.
And the sick kind of reality is that I'm pretty sure that Trump is fully aware that he's having that effect, and he is using that to his advantage.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. He'll use anything to his advantage, anything at all. Okay, I think we should sum up here and say goodbye to all our wonderful listeners. Thank you all for the support, and please sign up as a subscription if you like. If you enjoy listening to us go on and on about stuff, be a subscriber and also leave comments. Comments are really important. So let us know if you're happy. Let us know if you think what we've said here is crap, and tell us what it is. And also give us suggestions of what to talk about. Anyway, that will be helpful. So let us know if there's anything that you'd really like for us to yak about. And here's my website. No, I already have that up there. I want my email address if anybody wants to write to me, say hello, if they want to book a session or whatever it might be.
I'm going to plug you in. It's like if you would like to be able to have enough ego strength to do the deep shadow work that we're talking about right here, give Todd a shout out, because he's a master and cultivating that sense of that. Because one more caveat from me, which is that when it comes to shadow work, like we're talking about, as enticing as it is to a lot of people that want growth, I think it's important to remember that you need to have a certain level of ego strength before you start looking in your shadow. If your ego is not strong enough and you go looking into your shadow, it will destroy your fucking ego. And the way that we do that, the way that we build up ego strength, is through the hard, slow process of self-reflection that's guided through the therapy process by someone like yourself. So plug for you in this one.
Well, plug for you too, my friend. I mean, I wish I could be your client. I really do. Seriously. I think some of the things you say here, we used to work together in a different way, but we've never really listen to one another to the degree that we are now. And I'm like so impressed. Anyway, I know that's a plug, but give me a call or email if you're interested in me. And if you're interested in William, here's his address. So we're certainly open and free to work with people. So just let us know if you want to do that. And I'll say goodbye, and I will see you just like William. Yeah, we can actually see you out there, believe it or not. Next week, we'll have another topic that we'll talk about, and we'll go from there. So, William.
Take care, everyone. See ya.
Okay. See ya. Bye-bye.